Intelligence makes us pessimistic, but goodwill makes us optimistic. So I want to be optimistic. I think I will be more. I want to continue to work as a sommelier. I really like my job, and I want to continue to use the platform more and more to talk about what we are talking about right now. It's about, you know, you can continue to be an advocate and talk and talk and talk, but that doesn't really. We saw that doesn't make things moving around. I'm a big reader of a philosopher, like anthropologist, philosopher that passed away. His name is Bruno Latour. He's pretty well famous at least in the US, because he taught at Columbia. You need to give solution. It's time to just talking is great and criticizing is great and all that, but it's to give solution, which is what I'm going to try to give in this next book. It's about, okay, what are we doing? Can we really be doing?
Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and this is Voices. Every Wednesday, I will be sharing conversations with international wine industry professionals, discussing issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion through their personal experiences working in the field of wine. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your pods. Hello, welcome to Voices. This is Cynthia Chaplin, your host, and today I am so thrilled to welcome Pascaline Lepeltier to Voices. Pascaline hails from France, and she is a leading light in the world of wine with a lengthy list of achievements, and her first solo book, Mille Vignes, 1,000 Vines, was published in 2022 and just released in English a couple of months ago. So she was named one of the top 5 best new sommeliers in the USA in 2011. She received her Court of Master Sommelier diploma in 2014. She was recognized as a 40 under 40 tastemaker by Wine Enthusiast and the best sommelier in France in 2018. And right now, she's currently the beverage director at Chambers, which opened in 2022 and is already one of New York's most revered restaurants. So very, very busy woman. Thank you so much, Pascaline, for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Well, you're originally from Anjou, a really important wine region in the north of France, but you didn't set out to have a career in wine. You studied philosophy and you were getting ready to be a university professor in that field. So what happened that made you change tack? How did you get involved in wine? Obviously, you lived in a winemaking region, but that wasn't what you were planning to do. What happened?
Yes, I was very lucky to grow up in Anjou, but my parents were not at all in wine or restaurants, so I kind of knew wine, but from very, very far away. And as I was going into indeed the philosophy study, I just realized a few months before I was starting to take my diploma to become a teacher that I was not ready to teach philosophy. I was quite young at the time. I was 21. I kind of cruised through my my school years, and so a philosophy teacher, um, seeing me kind of really down and depressed and was burnt out by everything I was doing and wondering a lot, told me, listen, you should just go and find a job somewhere. You should take a year break. And he loved wine, and he told me you should work in a wine shop. So I went to work in a wine shop, and I took the buzz almost like right away. Like I didn't know at all about this universe, and it started to fascinate me. And on top of that, to make a little living during the summertime, I started to work in a catering company, and I discovered the world of food and restaurants, and I loved it. And so I asked my parents if they were okay if I could take a year to explore the field, and I went back to study a bit more restaurant management. And here we are after a complicated start of that career, because I was not really in France. It's very hard to transition, especially when you're good at school. People are looking at you very strangely when you want to do vocational school. So I had a very hard time entering an hospitality school. People were telling me that I was stupid to change career, but I perceived, and I went back to university. I did an MBA, and then I really realized I loved wine. I tried a magical wine at the end of my MBA, 1937 he came, and I was like, okay, I want to become a sommelier. So I went back to vocational school at 25, and I had my first job on the floor of a restaurant at 26. And here we are.
Well, philosophy's loss is the wine world's gain, I have to say. Uh, it's funny how these things happen. I think a lot of people in wine, myself included, I was on track to be a psychologist, and I think we fall in love with the world of wine, and as you said, also food, which in France can't be that hard to fall in love with. And I think sometimes people who love to study, as you did and as I did, wine is a never-ending thing to study. So that's also really attractive and seductive. So I'm not surprised, but I am certainly very glad that you made this big change. And once you got into the wine world, your career took off in a huge way. You went from working in some of the best restaurants in Europe, including Rouge Tomate in Brussels and Georges V in Paris, onto the US. And as I already mentioned, you were named one of the top 5 best somms in the US in 2011, and you got your diploma from the Court of Master Somms in 2014. So this is a huge amount to achieve in a very short period of time. And I didn't know about the MBA and the restaurant management program. So clearly, you are a very, very driven person. Many people in wine go decades before they accomplish this much. So, what was driving this? What you were just on fire with everything you were doing. What was pushing you forward into the world of wine like this?
Um, People. I think, it's very funny you say that about you and wine. I'm very glad to hear that. Um, I think when I found wine, I find something I could really deeply relate to. Um, Often I take the metaphor, the analogy with music. I would have liked to be a pianist, but despite all the hours I put into my piano lesson, I'm definitely not a great pianist. But suddenly wine I found maybe my calling, my vocation. And so I was 25, 26. Time was running out a little bit. I was quite old when I started in my school. People with me were like 16, 17. And I was just absolutely passionate. Suddenly, when you discover something you love, you just embrace it. And I think it went quite quickly because my age that could have seemed to me at the beginning as a disadvantage became an advantage, and especially with my background at university, where I was extremely lucky to learn how to think and how to learn. So in a very short amount of time, I could, I think, just absorb a lot of information and data that was not very hard for me. And I was guided by the right people in the vineyard and in a winery. Being from Anjou, I was really lucky to be exposed and to meet right away some people that are extremely important for me, that were part of this evolution of the viticulture into the farming approach. I'm thinking about the Nicolas Joly of the world, the Marc Angeli of the world. My region has a very important bed of people thinking about organic, biodynamic, and today even regenerative farming. And these people were extremely nice and kind, and I could right away discuss with them, test with them. And I saw my work very quickly on also as a very political work. I as I was doing my MBA, I discovered the world of Michael Pollan and all the anthropologists talking about the current system of the food around the world, and I never took lightly to be part of an industry that was feeding people. The luck for us to be feeding people with beautiful food, extremely enhanced food with an incredible culture. But what does that mean really to feed people, to give wine to people? How are sources produced? What are the intention behind it? And so you had two big drive. You have my personal drive with the pleasure I was taking to discover this universe and really the enjoyment, as you said, to be able to connect wine to aesthetics, to geography, to politics, to culture, to everything. That was fantastic to meet people, and the drive to realize that I could, I was in a position that was extremely important today to try to be a little bit more vocal about the importance of the food system. And my first job at Rouge Tomate was exceptional because this restaurant was embodying a thinking of what is to be a restaurant today. How is it to be truly sustainable, which means from the way you build to the way you run your restaurant in terms of energy, in terms of supply, in terms of all the question about of course food cost, about the sourcing, about the health of the clients, how you staff your restaurant. And for 10 years, I was able to see that it's possible to work in this business and to really try to offer an alternative to the current food system, which we all know is extremely problematic. So that's why. So the drive was extremely selfishly personal on one side, meeting, discovering these incredible people, tasting wine that was blowing my mind, and feeling that I could play a little part in the needed change of our society.
I think that's such a smart approach to putting food and wine together and the hospitality industry. I loved what you said about not taking it lightly to be part of an industry that feeds people. Um, I think it's something that we tend to forget sometimes, and wine is certainly an agricultural product in a way that a lot of other alcoholic beverages are not. So um, wanting to be more vocal about food systems and playing a part in that certainly doesn't sound selfish, but I do understand the joy that you can find in there. So, a very good reason for pushing forward. You managed to weave your career between the USA and France. You know, you were one of the 40 under 40 tastemakers from Wine Enthusiast and Best Sommelier in France in 2018. So, how did you end up balancing your transatlantic responsibilities and very transatlantic life that you have?
Yeah, so I'm based in New York since now 2009. Um, but my first job with Rouge Tomate allowed me to stay in touch with Europe because the company was originally based in Belgium. So that was one part, and on the other part, um, I negotiated from day one in my contract that I would have a certain amount of time off to be able to go back to vineyards. And so I spent every year since then a couple of weeks a year in Europe and in France at least, um, just because you continue to learn about wine. Because I really think you learn about wine in the vineyard with the winemakers and the vignerons. This is really where things are happening. It's not on a table in an office in New York City. So I was lucky to be able to do that. It was always extremely important. It was as I said, part of my job to go back to Europe. And for France, I think it's the same thing. It's I think you can understand is when you start to live abroad. This is when you realize that you have gold in your hand at home. So I really I learned so much from my first years in the US about a new way of thinking about life, with different culture, different way of working in restaurant, a certain amount of freedom. And I left France originally because I felt the weight, sorry, of the tradition. It was hard for me to be a woman at that time in a wine business. It was hard to be ambitious, to be also interested by non-traditional wine. I was really a lot into low intervention wine. I was very curious about wine that were not French. So when you put that together in 2009, 2008 in France, it was it was not the easiest place to find a job with responsibility. My first couple of years in the US, in New York, I had this beautiful restaurant, incredible budget, and I could do whatever I wanted. So the freedom, it was fantastic. But after a couple of years, I realized that I was who I was because of my heritage, because where I was coming from. So it was very important for me to keep in touch with friends, with my colleagues, with what was happening, with the history of my country, the gastronomic history, the wine history. And so I really made a big commitment to be in tune with the two countries because I could see how I was nourishing myself from both experience. And New York is not the US as we kind of know. New York is its own beast, is its own little island, Manhattan, especially with this extraordinary, incredible amount of culture, of nationalities, and all together in this tiny island. So I'm nourishing myself here from this eclecticism of culture, this fact that you are meeting some of the really most passionate people in any field you can think about, coming from all these countries, having all these stories, exposing you to all this incredible food culture. I love that here in New York. I love the entrepreneurship, but New York is a city that never sleep. It's always new, 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 new. It's like go, 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 go. There is time doesn't really count. And so when I go to France, I really like the idea that things takes time, that there is this heritage that is extremely strong, that I can learn from. There is this passion, there is mentorship, there is a lot of things that I really cherish, and I wanted to continue to nourish myself from both countries and to try to take the best of both. Um, and so, yeah, so it's part of. I'm going in France in a few days for a week. I write for a magazine in French. I I really enjoy being from two culture. I really cherish that. I think welcoming that is very important.
Well, we were definitely destined to have this conversation because my life has been the reverse. I'm American, obviously, and I lived in New York for a while, and I moved to Europe 32 years ago. So I know exactly what you mean. That each place that you are brings something new into your life and into your spirit, and I think it's a huge compliment to you as a person to be able to appreciate such different cultures, particularly as you said, Manhattan is not America. It really isn't. uh, but it's incredibly different from France, even Paris. So understanding how to draw something that's beneficial from both places is a testament to what you're doing in your life and clearly shows in your work. You never seem to stop. You won Wine List of the Year from the World of Fine Wine magazine for Rouge Tomate in 2017. You became a partner at Racine in New York in 2018, one of the top wine and dine restaurants, in the U.S. And then in 2019, you were awarded Personality of the Year by La Revue du Vin in France, where I know you write for them, as you said. And you were the first woman ever to receive this very prestigious award. And you mentioned, it's not always easy to be a woman working in the wine business, particularly when you're young. I went through that, and many people who are listening to this will have gone through that. Sometimes it doesn't get a lot easier. Sometimes it feels a little bit lighter, but I can't imagine you have enough walls in your house for all of these awards you've won. And yet you never seem to be a person who just leans back and enjoys, all the limelight of your success. So, what keeps you so humble but still so motivated? You're still doing so much in wine. We'll get to that in a minute. How are you balancing this great success with continuing to work? A lot of people would just say, "I've arrived. I'm done. I'm going to sit back and do nothing."
I think I'm just I feel very lucky to have been able to do so much, and it's not me. It's also a lot of support from so many people that have been along my side all this year to push me and to move forward um, and yeah, and to get all that. I think I continue to do a little bit competition and all this because I also realize that it was well, first I like to continue myself to improve. I think a lot of people can relate to that idea that there is always something to learn. And the one is infinite. You say it. You can never stop. And after I you know I really, for me, it's very like I'm very lucky to do a job that can seem extremely superficial, you know, which is serving wine in a restaurant. Um, I, I live in a neighborhood in Manhattan. I live in West Harlem since now 10 years. And I can tell you it's really not the wealthiest neighborhood in New York at all. It's, it's more grounded with the current crisis that the city is going through. I never wanted to continue to work in a restaurant that was also a Michelin-star restaurant, working for the wealthiest people in the world. Even though my restaurant right now is in TriBeCa, which is one of the wealthiest zip codes in New York, but it's also a very kind of neighborhood normal restaurant. Um, I think I was very influenced by the fact that the winemaker and the people that the most I respect the most in this industry, like I not respect the most, but that are the closest friends of mine and that really mentor me are extremely simple, humble people themselves and keep on pushing back, saying, "Hey, listen, we're really lucky to be able to work in wine, and the situation in this world is so complicated for so many people all around the world." And so, yeah, great, you can have the best one. Listen, what's really what does that really mean? Why, and that ground check of reality is needed, and once again, I was very lucky to be born in a family that was fine, that would, allow me to do some study. I didn't have to work when I was a teenager or a young person, really to pay for my study. I, loving family, like you go on. I was extremely lucky, and so I just, I just want to put things in perspective with the reality of this world today. And this, I told you, my motivation on one side is very selfish because, of course, I love wine, I love meeting people, I love reading, I love continuing to, and I created my own little world for that. But today, I'm seeing whatever I'm doing, and especially the media and the limelight to be more a platform to push a serious agenda, uh, which I'm lucky to be able to be a voice for, which is we us that we can, that we have the freedom and the money to be able to do so. We need to really to be realizing that we have a certain luck, and how can we participate to some of the needed change that the world that we're in needs to see, and one of them is through, once again, the agriculture and the food that we are eating. Um, and how can I be a voice for that? How can I be a voice of supporting alternative system in my restaurant, the way we buy the food, the way we serve the food? How I can be one bottle at a time, and that's really my job. I think it's to make people realize how they're powerful with their palate, how the sense of eating and like the sense of the taste and the nose is a source of joy, it's a source of pleasure, but it's a source of health, it's a source of fulfillment. And if they're a little bit more maybe aware of that because they never been exposed to things that ingredients, wine that are really exceptional for their vibrancy, they don't need to be expensive. How can they be suddenly realizing that and say, "Oh wow, this is what I want for me. This is what I want for for my kids." And so this is why this is why I do my job every day. And at the end, I don't do a lot when you think about it. The big responsibilities today in my field are, I think, taken by still the winemakers, because being in the agricultural field today is, as we know, extremely hard. uh, like from the farming itself to the extreme of the evolution of climate change, to taking the decision to make your living out of crops and to valorize it and to then to go and to sell it. My job is really very, I don't take a lot of risk in my job. I'm just passing through. Running a restaurant is a bit more difficult, I would say, but so just let's put back everything in perspective. And when you do that, suddenly you're like, okay, that's cool, I got that overwhelmed, but like, you know what? There is so much more to needs to be done. So, yeah.
Well, I love that. And keeping it in perspective is something that is easy to forget about, especially in light of lots of things happening in the world today, as you said. So I do want to focus on this, and I want to talk a little more in depth about your recent work and the wines that you're focusing on. You in 2022 you opened chambers in TriBeCa, as you said, focusing on farm to table food and organic and biodynamic natural wines. So I understand your connection and wanting to really take a look at food systems and, educate people and show them, the joy and the magic can be there. You've said you want to spotlight wine as a central part of civilization and focus on the link to nature and to culture so people can rediscover what farming really means. So, how are you modeling this philosophy at Chambers? Let's talk about Chambers a little bit.
Yeah, but Chambers is a new iteration of this restaurant called Racine that was opened in 2014, sorry. But how we do it in Chambers, we try to do it on a small scale. We are a small independent restaurant in which is not an easy thing to do today once again in Manhattan, and where like the cost of life has been skyrocketing. So
And the restaurant business is extremely competitive there.
yes, it's been really yeah. There is so many restaurants here in the city. Yeah, a lot of people are asking me why I'm still in New York with everything. I'm thinking that I should be somewhere else. But I'm still in New York because I think New York is an amazing platform once again to reverberate, and people are looking at what's happening in New York. And it's still one of the most incredible city for ecumenism and this interaction of culture. So I'm still in New York here. But when we changed Racine to Chambers, already one of the first thing was to readapt the restaurant to the post-COVID era, which was a very different moment. New York before COVID was very different than New York after COVID. And so Chambers wanted to be a more grounded first restaurant. We also changed a lot of things. We changed the way we are operating to guarantee a better lifestyle to our team. We decreased the hour of operation. We made sure that we had 2 days off in a row. We created we thought the restaurant in the way that, okay, if you want to pay your staff properly, how do we need to operate? And not like, okay, if you want to make that amount of money, what we need to do and where we can squeeze cost. So that was the very first thing. So we changed our model of operation for that to make sure we could have a good quality of life for our team and not the pressure that the restaurant used to have. Also, we are a dry restaurant. We are really emphasizing health with our staff. That was one side. We changed the design of the restaurant for the guests to feel better at ease when they were coming. So it's a very soft, very lit, very not noisy restaurant. We work with a lot of people to rebuild it that were local suppliers, and so we did a lot of the work with people in Brooklyn and in New Jersey. Just for the build up inside, we thought about all our energy bill. We thought about recycling. That how can you operate it in the most sustainable way if you want. And then for what we put on the plate and on the glass, my chef is American and worked with one of the most iconic farm-to-table restaurants in New York for 7 years. So he had extremely strong connection with all local suppliers. So we are making a small menu on purpose that is rotating as the market is rotating. Um, so it's not like a big, massive tasting menu. It's just 5 courses, five main, five app, 2 desserts, and really, really seasonal and local focus. Most of the food comes from like around not even 100 miles. Extremely seasonal, including for the fish that we are serving. And we do the same thing for the beverage. So yes, I have wine from a little bit all over the world, but mostly, in fact, North American and European. With my years at Rouge Tomate, I had the time to think a lot about all these questions, low caver versus organic, because I was lucky to work for 10 years with a team of scientists and nutritionists that were helping me to put the criteria uh, how you select your beverages. So we have a selection of New York wine. Uh, we have a selection of North American wine, including wine from Vermont, from Montreal, from Quebec, from Ontario. I have wine from Virginia, and then I go to California, and I really try every time to think about how people are farming, what are they farming, and it's not. The list is not we just take organically certified wine. We just biodynamically certified. We know it doesn't work like that. We know that as soon as you start to be a little bit more aware of farming condition in one region, some of these regions are not as suited. In Northeast America, for example, is a birthplace of most of the wine disease that we know, like downy, powdery, black rot, phylloxera. It comes from here. So it's very complicated to farm organically here. It's not impossible. There is almost nobody certified. But how can I really know the winemaker I'm working with? How can I have a direct relationship with them? And if I don't have a direct relationship with them, can I have a slightly indirect through distributor that I totally trust? And how can I build this program with the people that I think in the region I want to showcase wine from are probably are the ones that are trying their very best to farm the most sustainably possible, to produce wine that are really wine of place, which I think is why wine should be probably a definition of wine should be changed in the future. Like we can talk about that a little later, but I think wine definition should change. And how can I also find wine that have this sense of place, this unicity, this taste, this really incarnation, while, and for me it's very important, still remain affordable. The wine has changed quite a lot over the year, uh, from Racine to the opening list at Chambers to today, just because of the cost of wine, and especially in certain regions when it's becoming absolutely prohibitive. And we want to stay affordable for people. So we try to keep our price reasonable. So it's why also we rethought the way we're thinking about the operation of the restaurant. So that sustainability in the plate, so how can we still provide extremely beautiful ingredients, well done, well prepared at a fair price, as much as we can, being in Manhattan with the cost of living. And me, how can I do that with my beverages, be it the spirits, the tea, the coffee, the non-alcoholic, the beer, the cider, the wine, and exploring, looking for what's the future at a fair price for my guests. So that's what we're trying to do every day, and not to teach people about it on the floor. If I want to teach, I'm teaching in a school, but at the restaurant is really for people to have this experience of tasting just something good. And if they want to know more about it, I'm more than happy to discuss about it with them. But never forget that I am a restaurant first, which is a place where people are coming to enjoy themselves with their guests and eat and drink, not to have a master class on the crisis of uh, of the wine industry. So, what?
That's true. That's very true, and I think um, all of us who work with wine and have worked on the floor or in hospitality, we do forget sometimes that we can't be educators every minute. Sometimes I know myself, if I've had a long day and I've been presenting or been judging or whatever, I want to come home. I want to drink a glass of wine. I don't want to talk about it or think about it. I just want to enjoy it. And I think a lot of people who go out to restaurants want that experience too. And as as service people, we forget that, and it's very interesting to know that you're putting that first in the way that you treat your guests and how you welcome them in. So uh, I know that your other life is chëpìka. It's a wine project that you started in 2016 with the goal to rediscover the potential of organically grown native grapes and sparkling wines in the Finger Lakes in upstate New York, so not too far from where you are. People forget New York State is a big place. Uh, the name chëpìka means root and comes from the Lenape language spoken by the indigenous people from the Delaware Valley. And this is your joint project with winemaker Nathan Kendall. So you've been talking about your relationships with winemakers, and you were blessed from early on to meet winemakers who became dear friends, and now you're one of them. So what's happening with chëpìka and Nathan, and what wines are you making there, and how are they being received?
Yeah, thank you. chëpìka is a beautiful project. So thanks for talking about it, with my dear friend Nathan, who is born and raised in the Finger Lakes, upstate New York. chëpìka came up to be because I was working at Rouge Tomate, and that question of farming versus local, was really a problem for me at the time. There was no organic, or sustainability was very tricky in New York 2014, 15, because of what I said. Like New York is a very big wine state that people don't necessarily know about, but it's a lot of wine in New York, and a lot of American vitis are grown in New York. There's a kind of an important history, especially in the Finger Lakes, that's dated the beginning of the 19th century. And that history of the Finger Lakes, close to the Canadian border, was with hybrids, with the local hybrid, and what we call the natural hybrids, which is the one that were spontaneously created for some of them before phylloxera arrived in Europe and then came back to the US. But that period of phylloxera when really hybrids starting to take off in Europe with all the hybridization program. Here, as you probably know, when Europeans arrived, they wanted to drink wine, and they brought vinifera, and vinifera was dying because of all the disease. So they were planting vinifera in their backyard. And it didn't work very well, but sometimes vinifera was able to cross with American BTs like the Riparia, the Labrusca, and some hybrid were born from that. One of them being the Delaware grape, which is also why we call the project chëpìka in homage to the Delaware indigenous people tribe. And so the Finger Lakes, they grew a bunch of hybrids. One of them was specifically created called Concord, and it's still extremely present in Upstate. And so these hybrids, they were growing there without any problem. And they disappeared after Prohibition. And when Finger Lakes developed, they really, in the 60s, tried to plant vinifera. And they tried to really forget about the culture of hybrids. And I discovered the culture of hybrids really thanks to Nathan, because I was like, Nathan, I would like to have a project. I would like to have an organic wine for the restaurant from New York. Do you think it's possible? And he said, it's impossible with vitis vinifera. It's so hard. But if we want to do something, we can go for hybrids. And I'm like, hybrids? And me going to Finger Lakes for multiple times before that, none of the winemakers were really showing me the hybrids. Or when I was trying hybrids, I don't even know what exactly they were showing me, because it was blend of grapes I never heard of. They were back sweetened. They were very, very artificially made in the cellars. There was this lollipop, low alcohol, a little bit sparkling wine at the winery that people were drinking, what we call in limo, like during bachelorette party. Like no respect for the grape. And Nathan is like, okay, what about us trying to find an organically farmed vineyard of hybrid and try just to make it seriously, like really good good winemaking. I said, okay, why not? And he said that would be so in tune, in fact, with the history of the region, because all these hybrids were making extremely successful wine, especially at the end of the 19th century. They got medal in Europe. People from Champagne came to learn how to make sparkling wine with them. And Nathan was like, you need to read this book. So he gave me a book about the history of all that. And I was like, wow, that's fantastic. What was a grape? Oh, Catawba, Delaware, mostly. It was Catawba and Delaware. Can we find some? And I said yes. And Nathan found this organically certified vineyard that was certified since 1971 with his 100 years old Catawba and Delaware grapes. And he said, let's give it a try. And we gave it a try. And we from day one, we knew we wanted to make sparkling wine, because that was what was made in New York State in 1850, 1860, 1890, without anything added. So first vintage, we added a touch of sulfur, because it was the first vintage. We were not sure where we were going. And since then, we haven't added anything. The pH of the wine being what it is, it's a very low pH. It's extremely stable in terms of microbiology. So no problem, no sulfur, no problem. And it's all these hybrids are extremely fascinating grapes. They don't really oxidize in terms of the aromatics. And so the project that started with me wanting my wine for the restaurant, grew up, because suddenly it was more about both of us. We realized that it was a project about rethinking what does it mean to grow with very specific spaces in a very specific environment. And the environment on the Finger Lakes is extremely hard for vitis vinifera. We don't say it's impossible to grow vitis vinifera, but it takes a lot of time. It's extremely demanding in terms of treatment, in terms of labor. Well, hybrids, they grow extremely well. And we're like, okay, but how can we how is it possible that we can't think today in a different way? Like if you were very, very, very serious about what grows in a certain environment, New York State is an amazing state for apple trees. So we should be an extraordinary state for cider if we're very coherent about what is local and environment. As we know, people don't really want to drink cider, at least in America. So people are looking to drink wine. But if you want to be very serious about how to really grow something well in this environment, hybrid should be the way because you don't have to retreat them that much. They give you plentiful yield. They are pretty cold resistant. And so chëpìka became a manifesto for us about rethinking what should be grown in a certain environment. It's not because you can that you should. It's not because you have the technologies that you should. Because at one point, we are seeing it in other part of the world, you don't have the resources anymore. Maybe you want to grow grapes in the middle of the desert, but what's going on if you don't have more water? You know, like well, like right now you can still treat with a lot of synthetic product, but what's going to happen when petrol is going to be too expensive and you're not going to be able to afford chemical treatment anymore? You know, so and so that chëpìka became that more talking about a global environment, and then we also started to be more involved with associations in the Finger Lakes. One of them, where in fact the project for us is not a money maker project. It's really a love project because I have the restaurant. Nathan has his own winery, and so we part of the money we are getting from chëpìka goes back to certain association that for us are also extremely important to support. One of them is about literacy of workers. We have a lot of immigration worker without paper, and I know it's going to become a very, very big talk in the next couple of months with the new president coming in to Washington. But how these people they come, they don't speak English, so how can we be part of an association helping them to learn English and to get paper and to be to know how to be part of this country? So we do. We also support that association. And we support another association that is called Ojisda, that is about preserving the culture of the indigenous people of the Finger Lakes area that have been unfortunately more or less eradicated with the colonization. And how can we preserve their culture and make sure there is the old Delaware people or all indigenous people are able to have funding to save the knowledge, to teach about it, to create school about it. So chëpìka is also about that, about okay, how can we are lucky we can buy these grapes, we are this fancy outsider winemaker, but how can we participate and give back to the region where we are growing the fruits from? So
Well, I think our industry is facing so many challenges, as you said. A new president, possibly new trade tariffs, the Surgeon General's warning coming out, the potential loss of many jobs. So the fact that you are looking forward in such a supportive and positive way towards migrant workers, people who do jobs that other people don't want to do, that support agriculture at just the moment in time where agricultural existence is at risk. So I think it's really important that you're doing that. Of course, as I said, I'm American, so understanding the devastation that expansion in America wreaked on all the indigenous people, it's great to hear that you're supporting maintaining that learning, maintaining that knowledge and tradition and culture for the Delaware people in the Finger Lakes region. It's not something that's happening enough, and so it's great that you're involved in that. And you're in the midst of all of this unbelievably demanding hard work, and you still published your solo book, your very first solo book, Mille Vignes, in 2022, and it was just released in English, as I said, just a couple months ago. And this book is one of the most beautifully written wine books. I don't say that lightly. I write myself, and I read a lot of wine books. But in the past few years, it really stands out as just beautifully written and comprehensive, showing off all your skills, researching and storytelling. So, where did you get the idea for the book? And are you going to write another book in your free time?
thank you. No, but first, thanks a lot for saying that. I have a lot of respect for writer. I studying philosophy and literature. I grew up surrounded by books, so I have a tremendous respect for. So I don't feel like I'm the writer yet. I had an amazing translator for the English translation. So Malcolm Garrett did an amazing job. So I must really sing his praise. Yes, Margaret Rand also did beautiful work of editing. So the
She's a fantastic woman. She is a powerhouse. I love her.
yeah, so yeah, it was a extraordinary for me to work with her also. I feel extremely lucky about that because it's a person that I don't think people know enough about. At least maybe on that side of the pound. And wow, you're right, it's an incredible woman. So a big shout out to her and big thank you to her for the book. Yeah, no, the book came out to be because I started to teach more, especially here in America, and I got extremely frustrated by how we're teaching at a certain level. Uh, I was extremely frustrated about what was asked to the student to be able to pass diploma and to get their diploma, which for me looked like really more just learning by heart things without trying to understand. And I felt that, especially on the sommelier side, I think it's a little bit different, especially with the Master of Wine program, for example, which is way more comprehensive and when you really have a more of a research approach. But the sommelier approach and the more general public approach felt extremely narrow-minded and just about learning things by heart. And I felt that was a really major mistake, especially to be able to give ourselves the tools to understand the current challenges and instead of complaining to try to find solutions. And so this is why I wrote the book, because I wanted to give myself first the joy of doing research back because I really enjoyed doing research when I was at university, to really immerse myself into the field of knowledge that we're getting so incredibly rich, but a little bit more and more like expert driven. So many great works, but extremely precise in their expertise. And so my selfishness of getting into that, but how could I digest it and put it in a way that could be very useful for my students and showing what would mean to build critical thinking tool, and try to understand why are we here today? Why is it important to know the genealogy of the concept and the ideas that we're using today, and to realize that um, we cannot not be anthropologists. We cannot not be aware that whatever we are using and doing is part of a very specific culture, civilization, era, and that is going to have a mystery that's going to change. That when adaptation has been humankind since day one. So the way we think, well, the way we understand the world, that way we are, and so putting that back in that perspective. So that's why the book came to be. I wanted really first to write a book for me and on so many subjects I was interested by, to see if I could digest them and explain them, and then really for my students give them the tools to try to be allowing them to think by themselves and not being scared of things that look complicated from outside, but it's not complicated, it's complex, and not being scared of complexity or dynamic of things changing and swifting, because it's the reality of our world. It's the reality of our world that everything is connected. It's a relative world that when you talk economy, you talk history, and you talk religion, and you talk also a bunch of other disciplines, and all the disciplines are connected. So I wanted to just to make people feel more at ease with that, to give them the tool, and then they could go on their own journey after that, to embrace that. So that's how the book came to be.
Well, we're both educators. I'm a wine educator too, and I love your book so much, and I know that you're also interested in a new, much more mindful approach to tasting, not just learning about wine. I agree with you wholeheartedly that we have to change the way we teach about wine if we want to, welcome new people into the world of wine. People don't want to learn this way anymore, and it's really not appropriate for how much wine has changed. So I'm on the same page with you there, pun intended. But I know you want to, come up with a more mindful approach to tasting as well. And I think this is really important. You've been doing a lot of work focusing on the palate and the whole mouth rather than just the nose. and I know you're looking at developing more holistic practices for wine tasting. I really want to talk about this. It's so urgently needed right now, especially in the light of all the attacks on the smallest consumption of wine and declining consumption among younger consumers and people who are new to wine. What have you got in mind with this? How would you like to see wine tasting and the methods that we use evolve? Because they do need to evolve. They really must change.
I think I'm so glad that you are saying you understand what I'm trying to do, because sometimes like people are saying like, what are you talking about? Um, yes, this came out to be, in fact, once again, sometimes things came out to be because you're very like selfishly, but I saw I was reaching a plateau like 2.5 years ago about the way I was tasting wine. Reaching a plateau in terms of my ability to taste, uh, not necessarily remembering the analysis, where my tools were taking me. And it was also parallel to when I was writing uh, Milvin, like in French, and I started to read a lot of work of neuroscientists. And at that time, some neuroscientists started to emerge into the scene very actively, at least in France. Really, really new research about how your brain works with your taste. And I really enjoy this new approach, and I rediscovered the intuitive tasting that was done by a gentleman called Jacques Irigaud in France. That was then a brace, which is about rediscovering the tasting on the palate in the mouth. That was done in the 1890s, 1900 in France. So less importance on the nose, less importance on the sight, more importance on the feeling. Going back to this energy that was embraced, so that approach was embraced also by producer I really respect, like Anselm Stellos and Jean-Michel Dice and Olivier Zindenbrecht and all that. So Brecht and all that. So people that were I really, really respect were also like looking in that field I've been doing for like 15 years. So I was like really like, wow, there's something there. And so I trained with this very famous French sommelier called Franck Thomas, which has been applying this method since a while. And I really took something out of it. But it's not the most easy to grasp at the beginning. And I continue to kind of dive in that. And you know what really was the triggers was competition. And so I continued to do wine competition. Uh, kind of like the last one, the one I did for the world in 2023, was a happy accident because I didn't think I was going to qualify to represent France, and I did. And suddenly I had to kind of, wow, I need to be ready to to go for this competition. It's very demanding. And I decided to change my approach for that competition, how to prepare for it. And I connected with the, oh, you're gonna laugh, but I connected with the Olympic team of archery.
Wow, that's definitely a different approach.
Yeah, and their national director loves wine, so he put me in touch with the psychologist of the archery team and with a physical coach of the archery team. And I started to work with them on breathing, on muscle decontraction, of concentration, the way you need to do for you when with archery. Because when you do blind tasting for us, for example, it's super quick. You have like 4 minutes and you need to have all your senses, all your focus, all your concentration, and you need to find the wine, you know. So it's kind of the same mindset. You need to be hyper focused, but also if you are too stressed, it doesn't work. So I was like, that makes total sense. So I started to work with them, and I got a little bit of results.
You came fourth. Let's just say that out of, I think it's about 70 people who compete, and it's a competition that only happens every 3 years, and you came fourth, which is incredible. So yes, that was a good result.
Yeah, it was a good result. And so to continue on that, and you will see where I'm coming from. A couple of months after that result, I had a knee injury, and I had to get surgery for my knee. And so big problem, you know, when you're on the floor. So I had to take a break, and to straight like pass like go forward. As to recover from my knee, I started to do PT, and I started to do yoga, which I never was able to do before. And I decided to do that to compete again for the European sommelier competition that I took like 3 months, a month and a half ago. And I enjoy so much the process during the world, not necessarily of the competition itself, but I enjoy so much rethinking about my approach to my body and my health and how impactful it was on my tasting concentration that I decided to go even more full speed on that for my last competition. So I worked even more with a physical coach, with the psychologist, with yoga technique, with breathing technique. And I realized on top of continue to work with that more intuitive tasting to understand better my body, better my palate, better my health, better my nutrition, because now a lot of studies are going to go, and we're going to see that in the future, but how the guts, of course, influence the way we think, the way we are, the way we taste. That we kind of know a little bit about it, but now the studies are coming out. And the result were, for my little like more year preparation, were incredible. So I am now, that will be the subject of my next book. That's what I'm going to work on. After studying the object in Milving, now I'm studying the subject with myself, and I'm myself my own guinea pig right now to see by trying to understand better my physiology, my health, um, to try to develop more. I know everybody is making, like a lot of people are making fun at me. Like I wrote that little stuff in Decanter, and I got some people saying like, "Yeah, you go yoga before going to a tasting. That's bullshit." Okay, but really, and the word mindfulness has been overused. But I feel we definitely don't know how to do mindfulness when we are tasting. You know that you're being an educator. Are you really looking at yourself before going to a tasting? Are you calibrating yourself before doing a tasting? Are you calibrating with other people when you go and do a tasting? Do you know your threshold of sensitivity yourself? Do you know how sensitive you are to certain acid or certain tannin or alcohol? Do you know that? Do you understand what is your best pick when you really want to have that understanding of a wine you are blind tasting or you need to taste to write for an article? How many wine can you taste before you have palate fatigue? How much what you are eating is influencing what you are. And I really, really, really think is just the beginning of small, like it's going to be for me a revolution, but without being done with major changes. It's a little bit more looking inside of yourself, knowing yourself better, to be able then to taste better and to appreciate wine better. And in that way, I'm totally convinced there is a pathway to say that you can reach a certain level of well being and mindfulness while enjoying wine in a reasonable way. Because wine is just so complex. It's one of the most complex things we can eat or drink in the world of food creation. And wine is a perfect way to enter this internal universe that we are just discovering, that we could, each individual with his each individual with his unicity in its individuality, both cultural and physiological, can be an extraordinary mirror to know ourselves better, and by knowing ourselves better, to go into a better well-being stage. I definitely am totally convinced about that. So that's what I'm working on right now.
This is so exciting. This is my favorite part of this entire conversation. Very, very exciting. I judge a lot of wine competitions. I completely understand that frustration of feeling, getting up in the morning. I usually go for a run, coming back and, sort of taking a deep breath. Okay, now I'm going to go taste 80 wines, you know, and you think, am I being respectful of the producer? Am I doing this in a way that is, as you said, mindful is overused, but that is thoughtful? And it's hard to sometimes know the line. I would love to know myself better at that moment. So I'm excited for this new book. That is a big deal for me. I think um, I think you're going to be able to laugh at all the people who are making fun of you right now, because these things are important. And again, in light of all these health warnings and things that are coming out, I think taking a good look at how we taste wine, how we drink wine, even people who are not professionals, who how they incorporate wine into their daily life, and getting to know oneself better that way is a super exciting concept. Uh, I love this. So I'm looking forward to that book already. I know it's probably not going to be out for quite some time, but
But yeah, because yeah, it's gonna take some time. So I'm really doing a real time on myself. So but yeah, and but I will see. I have so many ideas coming out, and when you start, which is, it is there is sometimes a out happening in the world, but as I started to read stuff about a couple of ideas I have, and there is already people from a little bit what happened in Milvin. I started to read stuff about. I'm fascinated by the tea ceremony in Japan. I think we can learn a lot from the tea ceremony in Japan, not from the tasting itself, but the preparation, the ritualization. What does it mean to have a ritual, a physical ritual, a mental ritual? Like there is that on one side. There is stuff about I never read before, but I just discovered about the philosophy of smell that I just discovered on something else. There was a biologist also that I've just had to read that I didn't connect it before, but he's been writing a lot about the difference between performance and robustness. And so it's exactly about that. Is how can we be wine professional more robust, more adaptable, and not in the performance all the time? Because we are in the performance when we want to taste 80 wines a day or when I want to find a wine in 4 minutes. But is it really what matters today? Not really anymore. So how can we ourselves be more robust, build, I don't like the word resilience because everybody is using it, but how can we be knowing ourselves better for our health and our curiosity or mindfulness, the way we learn, the way we analyze stuff, because there is a lot of things to say also about that. And suddenly, when you start to look, you start to see there is already things around. So that's I'm excited because it's in the zeitgeist. It's around. It's around. Now it's just about how to make it, digestible again, and so it's very exciting. That and I must say, since I've been doing it, I've never felt that good. I'm never felt that good, and I've never tasted that well. So I don't know what to tell you. It's really cool.
I can't wait for this. This is super exciting. Well, before I let you go, there's one last topic I want to ask you about. You've kind of answered it, but I'm going to push you a little bit. So, just recently in December, in 2024, Decanter Hall of Fame awarded you the Rising Star as recognition of up and coming talent and cited your talents as a sommelier and an author and your efforts to improve wine's environmental and social impact. So, what does this mean to you now? It's kind of a big responsibility when someone says you're a rising star. You kind of have to rise up and do something. So, this book sounds like this is going to be the focus of your brain work and your personal work. But what other projects are you devoting yourself to in the next couple of years? What's your goal for 3030 with Chambers and chëpìka? In 5 years, what would you like to be talking about?
No, it's a big one. Yeah.
I know it's a big one.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we will be in 3030. On one side, the other day somebody sent me a little note for the New Year's, and he said, uh, "Intelligence make us pessimistic, but goodwill make us optimistic." So I want to be optimistic. I think I will be more. I want to continue to work as a sommelier. I really like my job. And I want to continue to use the platform more and more to talk about what we are talking about right now. It's about, you know, you can continue to be an advocate and talk and talk and talk, but that doesn't really. We saw that doesn't make things moving around. I'm a big reader of a philosopher, like anthropologist, philosophers that passed away. His name is Bruno Latour. He's pretty well famous at least in the U.S. because he taught at Columbia. You need to give solution. It's time to just talking is great and criticizing is great and all that, but it's to give solution, which is what I'm going to try to give in this next book. It's about, okay, what are we doing? What are we can we really be doing? Which project can we be doing? So I think my in 2030, I hope that I will be consciously to be part of that movement of allowing people to 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 understand that they are part of the change, are part of what can be done, and one of them is going to be through the way they take care of themselves genuinely and re-empower themselves, and maybe they will be through school, maybe through that techniques I want to try to develop and talk about. I want it to be free of access, that can be taught at school. So I can see myself, I think I understand that things don't change only because people are also showing by example, but because there is all this legislation behind. So I will probably be a bit more involved on that side because I really want, like, I had an amazing career. I have an amazing career. I tasted incredible wine. I traveled the world. I met extraordinary people. I want to give back. And I feel like giving back will go through being more involved in understanding the system and being involved at the level where you can really make things change. Uh,
Well, you've called yourself selfish a few times in this interview, and I have to say that's about the most unselfish thing I've ever heard in the wine sector. So I applaud that, and you've made me feel really happy for the end of this interview. I hope if you are going to compete again in the blind tasting, everybody better watch out because I I think you're in the right headspace to really crush it this time. Uh, and I can't say how you said you want to be more optimistic. You have just given me a gigantic load of optimism today for a very gray and rainy Friday in Verona. I am so glad that I got to speak to you today, Pascaline. Thank you so much for your time. It was really, really great to hear your very unique perspective. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me. Really, really, really appreciate it. So, thanks for all you are doing. I think this kind of podcast, continue to diffuse a diversity of voices and perspective with thoughtful question and not being, you know, scared of asking also more important question is really great. So bravo for what you do. Really, that's awesome.
Thank you for listening, and remember to tune in next Wednesday when I'll be chatting with another fascinating guest. Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with a daily show. Tune in every day and discover all our different shows. You can find us at ItalianWinePodcast.com, SoundCloud, Spotify, Himalaya, or wherever you get your pods.